What did it draw out of me?
Yeah.
Admiration for him, and also inspiration that it is possible to achieve these things, and devotion to him in a certain way, but not this kind of thing where I just wanted to sort of stare at him or wanted to do the thing, you know. I always remembered from Geshe Wangel's training that guru devotion is rather, I think, misinterpreted by a lot of people, and it's not even a good word. I think it's like a bhakti. The word bhakti is used, the Tibetan word form for that guba, but the way of what they call the Shenyan Tensu, the reliance on the spiritual friend, is divided up in two sections, basically. And one of them is honoring and respecting the teacher, and the other one is practicing what the teacher teaches. And that is the primary thing. The respecting and honoring and groveling around, doing all that, is actually a minor thing, and can be become a kind of fixation for people, and that's all they do. And that they're actually, and then people can become very egotistical about their teacher. He's the greatest, and they, against other people, or they can be possessive and sort of block other students from being with the teacher, play all kinds of games like that, become stuck in their stage of non-attainment and only seeing the teacher, everything, becoming terribly dependent on the teacher. And like, when do we go pee? What do we do? Like, type of thing. And that, I think, is a misunderstanding myself. I think that it is a matter, the primary element of reliance on, the word is reliance rather than devotion, shenyan tensul, dependence, reliance. Primary thing in reliance on the teacher, the spiritual friend. And again, the word spiritual friend is very carefully chosen. It's not, the word guru is a very authoritarian, it means heavy in Sanskrit as opposed to light. Another meaning of the word guru means heavy. And so it's like a heavy authority figure, like a parental. And in a patriarchal Indian society, the guru is a big thing. But the Kalyana Mitra means a virtuous friend or wholesome friend. And a friend, is like lateral related. It's an example for you and spurs you on, encourages, but it's not like a big thing on top of you. You have to like obey or something like that. So I like that your thing is called spiritual friend, because that's a Kalyana Mitra. Although, however, we do have to say also that in Tantra, then the word lama, which in some way is a translation, is the sort of meaning translation of guru, even though it's not exactly what guru is. But the lama relationship in Tantra, in a ritual setting, is a kind of serious, you have to see the lama as Buddha. And, you have to therefore reverse your critical perspective, and you have to see all the faults in yourself, and not in the lama, And so that is a very important element in tantric practice, in the imaginative visualizational practice. But on the other hand, you're aware that you're imagining that. You're making out of the lama an icon, just like you have a bronze statue of Shakyamuni. You know that isn't Shakyamuni, but you're seeing Shakyamuni through it, like an icon for Shakyamuni. So similarly, here you have the marvelous psychology of Tantrayana, not just a Tibetan invention, the Indian one. The Tibetans have continued with and persevered with, is making a living being into an icon. So you have a live icon, so you have a sense of the live presence of the Buddha, of which they are the icon. But actually, they are not the Buddha. You do know that. Except perhaps in some meditative plane, or some ritual plane, where you're visualizing so powerfully that you actually sort of shift into that matrix. Do you know what I'm saying? But you know that in other situations and settings, you're not doing that. And that's what I think people miss, the damage that has happened over the years in the guru-student, the abuses of the guru-student relationship in the Tibetan case. And although I think the Japanese case is very similar, or Chinese case is very similar, although they're less overt and explicit and analytical about their tantric dimension. But the disaster is out of what His Holiness has called once the poison of that teaching of the perfection of the guru, that you have to see the guru as perfectly possessing all the Buddha qualities. He calls it the poison of the misapplication of that teaching. Even though that's a crucial teaching, it's not a poison, it's an elixir, but misapplied it becomes a poison. And that is what? That means, well, in the ritual of initiation, my guru, Marpa, is one with Vajradhara. And I don't really get the initiation until I can see that. And then later when I meditate, I see him as one with Vajradhara. Even remember the famous story, he's more important than Vajradhara in a way. He's more important than He Vajra or something. The Lama is, the guru, And nevertheless, in another kind of a setting, like when I'm driving the car for the Lama, when we're discussing the finances of the monastery, if I'm not at a permanent retreat, and if ever we're doing something practical in the context of the worldly ethic or in the monastic context or whatever, then he's a Kalyana Mitra, or then he's a colleague, or then there has to be this flexibility of identity patterns and of identifications. After all, there's no absolute rigid thing. But they lack that flexibility, so therefore the guru, the Lama, will initiate people, and then he'll go and boss them around like a warlord. Or he'll go and misappropriate funds, or he'll molest people sexually, or whatever, because he gets too much power over people, and they give him too much power. And that's why Tibetans had an expression. They had the best Lama is one who lives at least 3 valleys away. And that is really special. It means they're not going to be the county sheriff on you, or you're not going to see all their. You're not going to have to do this in the midst of some worldly interaction where there could be a confusion growing out of that. Do you follow me? So I would say that this has never been fully articulated in the Tibetan tradition. Although, I'm working on the Tendyur, the treatises, translated from Sanskrit, and there are thousands of them, and also the huge number of tantric treatises. And I wouldn't be surprised to run into the articulation of this somewhere, because every time in my life of 40 years of studying, more than 40 years of studying Buddhism, when I say there isn't this or that, I then find it next week, because we're dealing with an ocean. But in a way, the complexity of the modern situation, where you might where a lama's in the government, you might be doing a consulting job for the government. And there they don't want you saying whatever the lama says. They want you to give your critical judgment. And there you're using your critical mind and faculty. When you're meditating on your retreat or during the initiation ceremony, you're suspending all critical faculty, and you're imagining yourself in the palace of the mandala and the Lama as one with Vajradhara or He Vajra or Advaya Samaja, whatever it may be. And the better you can do that, and the more amazing you can see, the better it is. But you're not, doing practically worldly activities there. Do you know what I'm saying? So how to move between this and between that? Do you know what I mean? And His Holiness, if you're around His Holiness, you really see someone who is absolutely majestic on the throne, teaching, especially teaching initiatory type of things, like giving wangs and, Kalachakra throne or something. There you do see Indivisible from Kalachakra, and he's in that field. But then, you meet him on the runway in the airport, and he's traveling, and it's like, claps you on the back, and he's fooling around and tickling the chauffeurs, and he's like just being ordinary on purpose. And he doesn't want you to go groveling around and like freak out and say, he's a Vajradhara, and this and that. And if he's about to trip over something, he wants you to tell him, don't trip. Look out, He doesn't want you to say, oh, I didn't say you were going to trip over that because you were supposed to be omniscient. And if you're tripping, it's for the benefit of sentient beings. He doesn't want that. He wants you to exercise your mundane ethic and your mundane critical discrimination. Do you know what I'm saying? And we haven't really articulated. People feel, gee, if they get the teaching from Guruji and the high thing, and then Guruji starts acting like a pig or gets drunk or goes crazy, they're not supposed to restrain him and say, hey, man, let's go to a clean out asylum or something, take care of your health. You're diabetic, don't eat a chocolate cake, You can't be critical, because then you're ruining your initiation. And in the way they have that, you could say that is an argument, that you shouldn't, once you really decided to go with someone as your mentor, you really shouldn't see their fault in any case. Therefore, you should kind of disqualify yourself from dealing with them in a worldly sense, because you want to be as pure as you can. There's some argument you can make to that direction. But where you can't them in some way, or where they're harming their own personal health, and you're a doctor and you're seeing them endangering themselves with a diabetic coma because they can't refrain from eating this and that, That's when you should, like, say, look, you know. Otherwise, you're selfishly saying, oh, you're my guru, you're going to die now, it's a great teaching to me. I mean, come on. That's not the teaching. Teaching is to, consider. I remember Geshe Wangyal once, again, who, of course, pointedly refused to be put in any formal role because of the fact he was dealing with people's real selves and personalities. So he wanted to retain always the flexibility that they also wouldn't feel too badly if they flipped out. Although a number of us who were his close disciples really saw him as something fantastic, actually, and I think he was. But I remember once one of his close students went home to the family for a few days, like for a weekend, in New England. And then, Monday, we expected back Monday morning and didn't show up back at the monastery, and didn't show up Tuesday, and didn't show up Wednesday. Thursday morning showed up. And Geshe Wangyal was really mad, and he said, well, where have you been? What happened? And he said, oh, nothing. Mom said they wanted me to stay a little this, and I spent blah, 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 blah. And then he said, well, why didn't you call? I said, oh, I didn't need to call. You knew. You knew my mother needed me a little more. You knew that. And then he really got mad. He scolded the hell out of him. He said, you pretend that you were thinking about me as if I was clairvoyant, omniscient, or whatever it may be, he said, and therefore, you didn't need to make a phone call to me to tell us that you hadn't had an accident on the road or whatever, just weren't going to come. And I remember he just, he had a way of really giving you a burning scold, this man, Geshe Wangyal did. And then and he ended up, I remember saying, much less do you not consider me some sort of holy guru or something. He says, if you even had as much consideration for my feelings as you would the dog over there, he said, I would think you'd made some progress, in your Dharma practice. I remember that. It was really, really great, In other words, there's an imperative to be ordinary in certain ordinary situations. That doesn't diminish from seeing things as extraordinary in extraordinary focus. You know what I mean? Buddhahood or enlightenment is not an achievement of some sort of rigid type of personality. Becoming enlightened is to become more flexible as a personality, more loving, more adaptable, more considerate of others at all levels. Do you know what I'm saying?